Hello and welcome to this new Java programming language course. In this course, we will learn all about the Java programming language. So to start with the course, you would have first to be able to compile Java code and to have a text editor. So you will have to install the Java JDK, so the Java Development Kit, right? So it's really easy. It depends on the operating system you're using. You basically go to Google and search for download the JDK, and then you will select your operating system, whether it is Windows, Mac OS, Linux, or whatever. The thing is that with Java, it doesn't really matter in which operating system you're using it, because it runs in a virtual machine, so it's the same for every operating system. So once you have installed it, in this case I will be using Visual Studio Code um, in a Linux operating system. In this case I'm using it on Debian, but it will work the same for Ubuntu or whatever other Linux distribution. So this is Visual Studio Code. This is a free text editor, code editor for almost any platform out there. You can also download it in Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. And so after you've installed the Java Development Kit, you should be able to open a terminal and type Java. And if you type enter, kind of these options should appear. And if you type Java C, which is the Java compiler, these options should appear. So before going forward with the tutorial, make sure you have Java and Java C installed, right? So basically Java is a high-level object-oriented programming language that runs on a virtual machine. This means you don't need to recompile your code if you run it on a different architecture, right? Okay, so Java basics are kind of about objects. Objects are kind of pieces of code that have certain states and behaviors, like maybe a person has a name and has a weight and has a, you know, something, right? Characteristics of an object. And we also have classes, which is kind of a template that describes the behavior of the object and the type of it, right? We also have methods that basically are procedures that we can call of a behavior of an object, right? So a class can contain many methods, okay? And we also have instance variables. So each object has its own set of kind of instance variables, and an object state is created by the values assigned to these variables, right? So we will start coding right now. We will open Visual Studio Code and we will open a new folder. In this case, my folder here is Java Tutorials. If you don't know how to open a new folder, you simply go to File, and here you go to Open Folder, and you basically create a new folder. Like right here, I have created this Java Tutorials folder. If I open it, you can maybe create another one. Maybe I will create one that is Java code, okay? And I will press in OK, and now the Visual Studio Code will open this folder. So right now we will create a new file by clicking on this icon right here, and I will call it Java code, right? So I will call it Java code that I call it that Java, okay, or that class, okay. So maybe I will use that class, right? I will press enter, and right here we can see that our first source code file was created. So first of all, every Java source code has to start with a class, right? So you can start by typing public class I will call this Java code, right? I will open brackets, okay? And once that I have opened brackets, I can write the remaining stuff. So inside the class, we can write the methods, and in this case, since we're using kind of pure Java, we want to write the main method, okay? So you're gonna say public static void main, okay? We open parentheses, and inside these we will put string a string array, okay, a string array, and args, which are the arguments that might be passed to our program, right? So that's kind of the starting point for us to learn how can we structure a Java program, okay? So we have a class right here, and inside the class we have the main method. So please write the main method as I'm doing, and now we're gonna print something to the screen. To print something, we're gonna say system that out that print ln, okay? We'll open parentheses and we will type hello world. So this will be our hello world program, okay? And we have to end this line with a semicolon, right? Okay, so now our source code file is ready. For convenience, if you don't have the autosave feature enabled, you can enable by going to File and then click here in Autosave, right? So you won't have to be saving every time you change or you make changes to your source code file. Okay? So now that the file is saved, we can compile this program, right? So to open the terminal in Visual Studio Code, we will press Ctrl and the key that is just below the escape key, and the terminal, as you can see, will be opened, right? So here what we will write will be the following. We will write Java C, and we will write Java code that class. And after we've done this, there's an error, so maybe we don't have to use the that class suffix right here. We will change the name of the file to that Java. So I was confused about this previously. So it's actually Java code.java. So we will rename our file right here, okay? And we will say Java C, and then we will call it Java code.java. And after we've done this, it still has some syntax errors right here. Oh, you know what? I think the problem here is that the name of the class should be the same name of this inside class. So this starts with an uppercase J, right? So we also have to use that uppercase J on the name of the file. So let me define this. So to uppercase J, and now we will run it again, and apparently we'll still have a problem. So let me see. If we press Java C, okay, Java code, oh, I'm not using uppercase here, so we'll use uppercase here. And what it says, it's saying invalid flag Java code that class, but it's not that class, it's Java code that Java, right? So once we've done this, we have an error right here, which is a typo error I just did. So instead of system, I forgot to put an M right here. So let's try it again. And now we still have an error right here. It says Java code is public, should be declared in a file called Java code. Okay, so again, so this is pretty important. We right here as the name of our class, you should have the same exact name of your file. Okay, so if it's just the J is the only uppercase letter, then it should be the only uppercase letter and the code won't be uppercase, right? So now if we run it, it's actually finally compiled after lots of errors, right? So again, to clarify this, we use javac because this is called the Java compiler, right? And as the file name, we have to have the same file name as we have in the class name, right? Okay, let me delete this other file I won't be using. Okay, so delete. Okay. Okay, so again, javac and then java code.java. We press enter and the program is now compiled. Now, how do we run that program? Well, to run this program, we will just say Java, okay? And then we will say Java code, okay? So, notice that here I'm not using javac anymore. I'm just using Java and then just saying Java code. Why not .java? Because the .java is the source code file and this is the executable file. If we see which files do we have, we can see that we have the Java code.class, which is equivalent to just Java code, and we have Java code.java, right? So we have those two files basically, and now this is how you create a simple Hello World program for Java, right? So as I told you, Java is case sensitive, right? So you have to be aware of the cases, so to avoid the errors I just made previously, okay? So that's how a simple Java program works, right? So let's go back to the Java source code to learn a bit more about it. The first word we have, it says public. So what does public means? Well, basically, public is a kind of a identifier that enables us to know how accessible an element is. Okay, so it can be public, private, protected, right? So what does it mean? If it's public, it means it can be accessed from the outside world, right? If it is private, it means it can only be accessed from inside the class, right? Kind of from the inside world, if you want to talk that way. And if it's protected, it can be kind of that it can be accessed from inside the package, which means kind of imagine a class is your house, right? And protected means that it can be accessed by the other houses in your block. Okay, public means that it can be accessed by anyone in the world, right? And private is that it means that it can only be accessed by you or by other house or family members, right? Okay, so this enables us to restrict access or to allow access to different instances of a program, right? Okay, so we also are able to have local variables and arrays and all kinds of different data types that we have on another programming language, right? Okay, so then we have this public static void, which means this is a method that returns void, which means doesn't return anything. Absence of type basically means void, and static means that it is kind of exists only kind of statically in memory. So this means it can exist as a if we have a static variable, we can keep the function the value of the variable between function calls, right? Okay. So, and we can also write comments in Java. To write comments, we start with double slash and we will say, hello, I am a comment, right? So this is basically how we write comments. And we also have multi-line comments, if we want to write more than one line comments, we say slash asterisk, and then we will close with asterisk slash. And inside these two kind of blocks, we can write whatever we want in multi-lines, okay? Lots of comments, right? So we have single line comments and we have multi-line comments, right? Okay, so now we also know how to print out to the screen, which uses the system out println, which is a method that is available to us as part of the Java language in order to enable us to print to the screen, right? So, what are objects, right? Well, like in the real world, we have different objects like tables, chairs, cars, whatever the case may be. For example, if we consider an animal like a cat, for example, we have that the state can be, maybe it can have a name, it can have a size, it can be of a certain color, it has some behavior like making cat noises, right? Or liking to play with anything basically. So an object defines how that object behaves and the characteristics of it, right? So Java is an object-oriented programming language, right? So if we want to define a dog, for example, right, how can we do it? So first, we can create an inside class inside this to define a dog, or we can also create something outside this class, right? So if I create something outside this class, just after the class bracket, I can say public class dog, for example, right? Okay. Now what I just did is creating a dog object that will enable me to define it as a different sort of behaviors and characteristics and features that a dog has. For example, inside the class I would say string breed to store the dog breed, right? So a string is basically a data type that enables us to store a sequence of characters, like a sentence, right? Or a word, or a paragraph, that enables us to store text, basically, right? So that's a string. We also have int, okay? So what is an int? Well, an int is an integer value, which enables us to store numbers, right? So maybe the int will be the age, right? So I'll say int age, okay? Okay, and maybe we want to also define the color of a dog. So I'm going to say string color. Okay, so that's how we define stuff right here. We can define maybe the weight using another int, but if we want to be more precise, and instead of using integer values, we want to use floating point values, we can say float and define a dog's weight, right? Okay, so float weight, okay, maybe in kilograms or pounds or whatever the case may be. So this is how we define a dog element. We also can define some behaviors of a dog. For example, barking, right? So I'm gonna create void, I'm gonna say barking, and we're gonna open here, and now we have a new behavior that the dog is able to bark. So that's basically how we define a dog. You can extend this dog class by adding more features and more variables and more methods and so on, right? So this is basically how we can use this. Now, we will learn about constructors. So we will talking just about classes, but a very important part of classes are constructors. So every class has a constructor. If we don't write a constructor for a class, um, the the Java compiler will build one, right? Okay, so every time a new object is created, we have to somehow have a constructor, either implicitly or explicitly, but we have to, right? So constructors are just about that they should have the same name as the class. And of course, a class can have more than one constructor, right? So let's understand how a constructor can work. So we have public class dog, right? So the constructor method for dog would be public dog, right? And that's the constructor method, okay? But we also can have more than one constructor, right? In this case, it would be, for example, public dog, but in this case, we can have a parameter here, which are values that can be passed between methods, right? Okay, so you're gonna say string name, for example, right? So we can initialize the dog with a name, okay? Okay, so this is basically how constructor methods work inside classes, right? So pretty easy so far, right? So now, how can we create an object? How can we create an object? So maybe we want to create an object inside our main method right here, up here. If we want to create a dog, how do we do it? Okay, so after we print hello world, we will say something like dog, and I will call it my dog as a name, okay? And when I do this, I can either create and call a constructor, like to create a new element, we type new and say dog, for example, right? Okay. So in Visual Studio Code, we can also install a code formatter for some programming languages. So let me see if I can do it now. So I will click on install formatter, and let's see if I can have a sort of a, okay, right here. So I will install the first one that appeared right here. What this will enable us to do is it will basically kind of color the code out and enables us to ident and order the code, and depending on the plugin it may have different features. So this is kind of an advantage of using Visual Studio Code, because we can download these additional plugins and make our lives a lot easier, right? So right now, as you can see, it's being installed. If you want, you can also install this. I'm using this language support for Java by Red Hat, which was the first that appeared in my list. So it looks very popular. It has kind of a 15 million downloads, so it should be good, right? So now it says installed, okay? And it says, do you want to include VS Code, Java project settings, files, and all of this? And I'll say, you want to exclude? No, I won't want to exclude. Okay, class by only syntax errors will be reported. Okay, not problem. That's okay. So now if I go back to my source code file, I can see that it has some colors coded right here, so which is kind of nicer. As you can see, these strings are now in red and the other in blue, and some green for the comments and so on. So basically, this is how we create a new element. So it say my dog is set to new dog. Okay. So, and maybe I can also call the other constructor by saying dog, my dog with name, for example, and I will call new dog, and I will pass the name of the dog. In this case, it will be max. Okay, so capital M, right? So what I'm doing in the first case is I'm just calling new dog. This means this will go down to this plug, to this class, and we'll call this method right here. But in the second case, I'm calling new dog with a string parameter, with the dog name. So it will be called through here, right? So this is how we can access an object and create an object, and then maybe access with the different parameters. Maybe we want sometimes to create a dog with a name, maybe with an age, maybe with or without color. So it really depends on how we can do this, right? So now, what if I want to make the dog bark, right? How can I do it, right? So if I'm right here, after I have created my dog or my dog with name, I can say my dog, and then I will type a dot, and as you can see, I can set the dog age. So I would say dog age will equal to 10. Okay, but I can also call a method, so I can say my dog dot barking. Okay, so if I call this method, the dog will bark, right? If I have set that here. For example, I can make that by saying system dot out dot print ln. Okay, so this print ln is the same as we did here when we printed hello world, right? So print ln, and we will say barking, right? Or something like that. Now, if we compile this and run, so I'm gonna say java c, and then say java code.java, and it will be compiled, and here we have an error. As you can see, it says dog is public, should be declared in a file named dog.java, right? So this says that the dog class should have, oh, let me see. So the dog class should have its own file because it's public. So what if I want to make it private, right? Or nothing, no modifier at all, right? So if I don't use any modifier and I go again, and I can see it is now compiled, right? So to run these, I will say Java code, and as you can see, it says hello world, and then it says barking. Why does it say barking? Well, because we're creating a dog object right here, and we're calling it the barking method of the dog, right? So that's how we can call different methods and access different ages, or in this case, we're accessing the age, or different data types, and so on, right? But we can also create a method that will enable us to maybe set the dog age in a programmatic way, right? So we go inside the dog class and we'll say public void set age, for example, and we will pass an int right here, so int age, right? And what we will do here, it will set age. Okay, let me see. So I want to access this age variable from here. How do I do it? So to access a variable from outside, we will do the following. We'll say this dot age, okay? This dot age, and we'll set that to age, right? Okay, so what does it mean? This refers to this class, right? So when I say this dot age, the age I'm referring to is not this one, but this one, because I'm referring to the age that is inside the dog class, right? So you can say this class at age, and this will be set to the local age, which is this one right here. Okay, so if we compile it, it compiles great, so it works, right? Okay, so that's how we can set the age, but we can also get the age, right? So to get the age, we can say public void get it's not a void, it should be an int because it will return the age. So we'll say public int get age, right? And when we call get age, what we will return is return age. We can just return age, or we can return also this, that, age. It will return the same, but we don't have, because here we don't have another age to be confused, to cause confusion to us, right? So basically when we call this method from outside, like for example, if we say, we set the age here, the age, and then we say my dog that get age, it will return 10, right? So if I create an integer right here, int age, it will be set to my dog get age, and it will receive the number 10. So in this tutorial, we learned how to set up our Java development. We learned how to create classes. We learned how to create methods, how to print something to the screen. We learned how to access objects and call constructors and call different modifiers. And in the next class, we will keep learning about more object-oriented concepts. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I see you in the next one. Bye.